So as I said again, this is Rabbi Nubisa. It's open mic. We're going to start with the questions which we were given, but we're definitely going to try and take as many questions as we can and hopefully give you some answers that resonate with you. So I'm going to ask the Rabisa to go with one that she wants.
All right. Okay, so one of the questions, and I really like it because I feel like I talk about it a lot, and that is, the person said, do you see that respect is on the decline in our society, and what do you think of that?
Okay.
So, so with my students from age 2, because that is the youngest students that I teach, to the most elderly, it is a topic that we talk about a lot because it's such a core Jewish understanding, right? That the kavod habriot, the respect for all of everything, right? Everything from a tiny insect to every other human, that everything was created with a divine purpose. So have we noticed that respect for that is on the decline? Sometimes. Is that the whole answer they wanted? Well, the question is, and I think that where we run into it is not, I think that respect in communication is not as good as it should be. And I think that, that a piece of respect is respecting that people have different opinions and being able to communicate about it. And I think that certainly within a political arena and within general society, people have lost sight of being able to communicate a difference of opinion with respect, and that because of that, once we can't communicate about it, then the respect is lacking.
Yeah, I mean, to carry on what you were saying, it's real, the ability to disagree politely, the ability to communicate and converse with different points of view is what's falling apart. We're all happy talking with people as long as they share our opinions, but if they don't share our opinions, I'm out of here.
Because I'm right, and so...
By definition, they must be wrong, and so why would I want to talk to them? Which is why it's always so hard to chat with you. But it's a challenge, and I think it's a unique challenge that we are facing, that as we move more into individual nature of society, where we're more focused on the individual rather than the collective, my opinion matters far more than what's good for the entire community, what's good for my family, what's good for the town, what's good for the city, what's good for the country. And that's what's being eroded, because what's the most important thing? What's good for me. So rather than I think that respect is going for individuals, I think it's respect for other people's points of view when they disagree with me. And one of the things which is important to me and to the Ravisa is that we should feel comfortable when we're having these conversations, that it's okay to have different opinions. It's okay to have different political beliefs, different religious practices, that we are able to communicate and converse. And if we're able to do that respectfully, then I think that any conversation that we have, whether we agree or disagree, we can do so respectfully. But we have to have those fundamental agreements at the beginning, which is, I'm going to hear what you have to say. It might be uncomfortable. It might push me to a position where I didn't think I was okay with, but it's going to help me understand you better and therefore respect you more. But if I can't have that conversation, then respect doesn't even make it into the discussion. And that's something which I think is missing in today's society, and something that we need to bring back one conversation at a time with one friend at a time, with one family member at a time, and slowly we can build it up. And
because disagreeing is really also a core Jewish value. I know that sounds silly, but the whole way we learn, right, of Chavruta learning is you learn with a partner and you debate a point and you explore that and you unpack it. It's not the, you know, echoing back what someone else says. It's questioning what they said and contemplating it and discussing it and growing from that. You know, you look at like, well, I could go through, you know, Hillel and Shammai, but the greatest relationships are those where you, not where you echo each other, but where you bounce off each other and you disagree to come to a greater understanding.
yeah, I have to echo what you were saying there, because not that I always agree with you, but I had this fascinating class this morning where I was asking my middle school students at the Hebrew Academy to argue a point. Now, this is something which is really challenging, because often what happens is you get a dominant child presents a position and everyone just agrees, just so they can avoid a conversation. But here I had two, and both SPH members, I was very proud to say, duking it out, arguing which one was there. I actually had to hold them back and say, you've got Talmudic learning because you're arguing and you're listening. But I said, can we just pause right now? And can you explain to me what your friend just said? And can you give back to me what your friend just said? And can you explain to me their position? Because if you can explain to me somebody else's position, that means that you're really listening, that you're really caring, and that you're able to see someone else's point of view. You know, and I think that's what we need to be modeling, what we need to be teaching, and what we need to be communicating to each other, the ability to hear the other person. And really, am I listening to what they're saying? Or am I just waiting them to finish so I can add what I want to say? So here's another question which we were asked. And again, I want to, if you want to put something in the chat or you want to add something, please let me know. This was the first question which I received from John, and it was, is COVID a plague? Okay, this is the question. And I can see that before I answer that question, I see that Louise has a question. Do you want to unmute yourself, Louise?
I was just going to make a comment about the respect. I don't know if you listened to Dr. David Smith when he talked about civil conversations in an angry age, but he talked about respect and civility. And a lot of the things that you just talked about are true. He talked about why people have incivility, I guess, and what is a recipe for civility. So I think if anyone is interested, they might want to read his book, and he goes into it in detail about how you can have a different opinion or feeling, but there is a way to stay civil in your conversation.
That's excellent.
Beautiful.
Marco, do you have a point?
Yes, Rabbi, you know, I understand where you're coming from, and it makes a lot of sense when we talk about civility and honor and respect, but I think it's much more fundamental than that. I don't know how that relates to a young person not holding the door open for me at a bank, or a young person not referring to me as sir. I know when I was brought up, my dad, Sam, used to say, you know, you respect your elders, and you call this person sir and ma'am. Well, to be honest with you, sometimes I feel cheated because young people don't give us the respect that we cared about so importantly when we were growing up amongst our elders. We honored age. And now it seems as though we just get pushed aside by young people. That's what confuses me.
And why do you think that that's happening? What has become the difference? I mean, one of the things which I've appreciated coming to be part of the Seattle Sephardic community is, and someone told me this very clearly, and they said to me, don't call them the older community, call them the elders. They're the elders of the Sephardic community, specifically. And it changed my complete approach to when I would visit, whether going to the summit or even going to the Klein-Gallant home, that these are the elders. You know, if these are the elders, it carries with it a different connotation, a connotation of these are the ones who came before me and established what I have, and therefore I am duty bound to give them respect. But if they're the old timers and they're just older than me, it doesn't mean anything to me, then I'm not doing anything by that. So what is it about age that I need to respect? What is it we're saying about someone who is an elder that I have to show them respect? I mean, Mark, undeniably, people are not respecting their elders this much, but I think part of it is because they're just seeing them as old timers. They're not seeing them as elders. They're not seeing them that, oh, maybe they have a different point of view. Maybe there's something which I can learn from them. And it goes back to that point, which is, can I learn from somebody who is different from me? Do I only learn from those who are like me? And this, again, and people, please feel free to put your conversations in the chat, especially if you are able to put them publicly so we can all read them. It's this key, which is whether it's in the Jewish community or it's national politics, all these things are playing out on the same way. You know, we're mirrors, we're just copying what's being seen in other areas. So although sometimes people say, Rabbi, can you just not talk about politics? And generally I try to stay out of it when I can. It's a piece of trying to understand, why is it that we don't respect each other? Whether it's our elders or whether it's our young folk. Do young folk deserve to, do they deserve any respect, or do they need to earn it? Because that's here a lot. People need to earn our respect, and then I'll do it, as opposed to, wait a minute, begin with the natural position that people deserve respect from the outgo. I can see that Ralph has something to share.
I do. For example, we have someone in our extended family who takes a totally irrational, unreasonable position about COVID. It's a hoax. It's, don't say who.
His family.
It's not me, it's her family. It is her family.
It's probably in all our families, I have to say.
But a totally irrational position. And I think in order to communicate with a person, they have to be reasonable. They have to be able to express reasons for what they're saying, and not just having drank the Kool-Aid, if you will. And how do you speak with somebody like that respectfully?
So my first reaction to that is there might be someone in my family too, and it's not on the COVID topic. There are some topics that I do not communicate with them about, but that doesn't mean that I don't communicate with them on other ways and respect them on other topics. But I know that on certain very specific topics that it's a no-go zone, and that's important for our relationship. So, you know, you can respect somebody and respect their opinion, but not have to discuss everything, because not everything has to be spoken about.
Do I need to agree with you again? There's another point here, which is, I'm very happy that I don't talk politics publicly. Most people don't even know my political leanings. Some people might think I'm to the left of them or to the right of them, but generally people don't know. And that's because I want to be able to be open with everyone. However, those people who do know that my politics, and if they disagree with me, we have understandings that certain conversations are just better not having. I think sometimes we kind of get caught up too much in the news that we watch, whether it's on social media or we go to CNN or Fox News. We get so caught up in it, we don't realize, you know what, there's more to life than politics. There are so many more conversations, so many more opportunities to discuss. But yes, I understand that things frustrate and can drive us crazy, and we just want to have how can people think like that? How can people say things like that? You know what? Talk about other things, talk about Torah, talk about ethics, talk about morals, talk about, or if none of that works,
Seahawks.
yeah, I think most people can agree on the Seahawks, except when we don't play so well. But so far, we're in the playoffs, so we'll take that. But,
and you're right, Ralph, that it's particularly hard when it's something that's medical and scientific, and so it seems so obvious that it is one way. And that's why I agree with you. Like, it can make you crazy talking to a person. How can you respect them when they feel this way? So just respect them for everything else, and don't talk about that thing.
and again, much easier to give that advice than to live by it. But I still think it's good. It's a good way to go. Anyone else have comments on this particular topic?
Nice. David.
I do. Hi.
Hi, Donna.
I missed you earlier.
Hi, everybody. I'm thinking about the idea of respect, and I think that there has become in our society kind of this letting down of boundaries, where there's too much familiarity, where people don't have respect for positions. For example, a policeman, a grandmother, a president, a parent. I just think there is a lack of respect just for the idea of having like a certain stature or a position. And I think there's just this breakdown of just a lack of manners or civility. It's just too much familiarity. There's just no boundaries. And that's kind of what I'm thinking about.
I think your observation is very accurate. And that's, that boundary and reframing boundaries, as the rabbi was saying before about, calling people elders instead of old folks, and reestablishing those boundaries. Because you're right, things sort of swing on a pendulum as to how much they are. And there was a belief, I guess, that there was too much in the way of boundaries. So, boundaries put up walls and put up barriers, so we need to take them all down as a society. Well, once all of those boundaries come down and there's no more boundaries and barriers, then you don't have boundaries, and it's a problem. And so it's my hope that we as a society will swing back into the direction of the boundaries and the respect that comes with it, but still to be able to have, the boundaries came down so people could have relationships. So I hope that it doesn't get compromised on the uptick.
Yeah, right.
And Donna, I just want to put out there, I agree with you. And it's contrary, and this is something that the Rabbi and I talk about, seeing things through Torah lenses or through Jewish lenses. It's very clear, if you had to say, what is Judaism's position on respect? It's definitely stand up for your elders. It's definitely honor your father and mother, all those types of things. Open the door for the old lady, help her with her groceries, all those types of things which go with it. And we can do those things. And I think I go back to this. It's not a cop-out. I honestly believe that we have to model particular behaviors and not worry as much about greater trends, but think about who are our areas of influence, who can we influence, and therefore seeing that. Because I think when we demand that people respect us, it just pushes it away. So I think rather than demanding or hoping or wishing that it was the way that it should be, I think we should just try to model it and establish it, which is, this is how it should be. This is, and this is where we're going. I just think there's an irony. And again, this isn't my personal experience as rabbi of SBH, but I have been told, again, not my experience, but I have been told from other rabbis in other communities, being a rabbi is not the honored position that you would think, because people give the rabbi a hard time. People don't naturally respect the rabbi. And in fact, often the more orthodox the community, the more observant the community, the harder the job it is for the rabbi, because he doesn't have the respect from the community, which I think is an interesting point of view, which is sometimes we can be attacked on breaking down of values on all sides. So even something like ultra-Orthodox Judaism, which is very insular and very protected, where you would expect the value of honoring the rabbi would be the highest pedestal. I know Alan and I always joke about his brother. No one would ever want to be a rabbi in the Orthodox community. It's not a good job for a Jewish boy. Why? Because it's so hard. So it's an interesting perspective to know that it's all over the place. It's not just in the far left. It's not just in liberal circles. I think it's all over there. And I think one of the positions I've always liked to say is we need to be able to call out problems on all sides of the aisle, on all areas and facets of life. And again, moving away from politics, we need to be able to, when there's a problem, be able to say that there's a problem. But as I said, more than calling it out, we have to model and we have to try to make it better, at least in our small areas. And if we can do that, I think we can make small ripples can have butterfly effects that can really change things.
Positive.
Any other comments on respect? Okay, so I want to go to that question, which I
David does.
Oh, David, take it
Yeah,
away.
actually.
Sorry. Okay, I didn't see.
I think it's a
David,
very good conversation. You know, I think that a lot of times whether it's COVID or whether it's climate change or whether it's some other hot topics for people, they feel that, from some people I've heard, they feel that if you're not on the same page, you're affecting my life. In other words, if you're not recycling, or if you're taking too much car trips or some airplane trips, if you don't believe that there's a climate problem, then you're affecting my planet. And they take it personal. And it's really hard to handle that. Say, look, I respectfully hear your position. Unfortunately, I don't have the same data and I don't agree. But they don't accept that. And you do the same thing with the COVID. There's so much information out there that if you look at a lot of different news sources, there's a lot of evidence that says that COVID's not such a big deal as people think it is. And then there's overwhelming evidence that it is a big deal. And so whether you wear a mask or don't wear a mask, we've got 5 shuls, I know, right? Synagogues here in Phoenix, half of them have a mask and distance mandatory, and a couple of them don't. And if people want to go to the mandatory one, they're welcome to go there. If they want to go to what's not mandatory, they're welcome to go there. But I think when people feel that their personal life is being affected by what you do, then it's very difficult for them to respectfully disagree. And I think that the best thing we can do here tonight is come up with as many solutions as possible. I'm going to call Larry Almo out if he's still there. He's one of the best people I've ever met that has always seems to know the right thing to say. There's a lot of other people that I'll do too, but Larry just always seems to know the right thing to say to the person, no matter how sensitive the issue is. And you always go away from Larry feeling better no matter what you did before you got to him. Anyways, but you know, not carrying the conversation in that direction is a great idea. It's like, let's talk about something else or whatever. Any more of these good ideas, especially when people, like Ralph said, are unreasonable. You can't deal with people that are unreasonable. You just have to change the conversation or leave it. I mean, anything else that you guys might have as solutions to these problems that we all face is really good.
Well, you're using the word change and change the conversation. Oh, Carol, sorry. Let me just fit it. But, and then your turn. But to realize that in all likelihood, nothing in a conversation, in all likelihood, is going to change their mind on some of these, you know, red topics, but whatever that word is.
Right.
And you're not going to change them. You can only change yourself. And so to know that you're speaking to a person who is made by the divine, just like you'd like to understand that they have purpose in this world. God created them with purpose. You might think the words coming out of their mouth make them a complete fill in the blank, but you have to be able to change yourself to say, well, they have a purpose, they have value. I don't agree with their purpose. I'm not going to change them. I'm just going to respect them, and to remind yourself of that, because otherwise we do fall into that pattern of,
Yeah, well, I mean, so well, for sure. I mean, that's the obvious way.
I mean, David, and I want to hear from Carol in a second. You know what, let's take Carol's question, and I want to come back to you, David, because Carol's been waiting for a while. So
you need to unmute, Carol.
Okay, unmuted.
there you go.
Okay. What I actually unfriended some friends that were lifelong friends because I was being bullied over politics on Facebook. What I've always done, and to add to the discussion, is whatever I write stays on the internet forever. So it should always be respectful. But not everybody gives you the respect back. So to preserve my own self from stress, I just defriended because I couldn't change them. They couldn't change me. And, you know, and Hanukkah, I got a text message, Happy Hanukkah, by my phone, not on Facebook. So we're still friends. So that was good that it made boundaries, and that added to what you were saying.
Yeah, I think that Facebook has changed a lot, and actually thinking about moving away from it as a medium, because it's become such a polarizing thing. And to be honest, all I see are ads and people putting up things I don't really want to read. So sometimes it's, you know what, can we just go back to how it used to be, just sharing family photos?
Exactly.
Especially baby photos. I mean, who wants to see anything else, to be honest? You know, or vacation trips. I mean, pictures. I mean, it's a sad thing, which it's human nature that we find conflict. And we could argue on what color to paint the synagogue bathroom. You could argue about that. You could argue about who should be the president of this country. You could argue about COVID. You could argue about the environment. But the truth is, we could argue about anything. We could argue, is Rick Eskenazi's beard black, or is it gray, or is it salt and pepper? We would find something to argue about, because that's human nature. And we have to realize that we are forcing ourselves, that what sells bad news sells, controversy sells, that news today is made because it's meant to grip people. When there's a no news day, no one's running to read, you know, CNN, Fox News, New York Times, Seattle Times. No one's going there because there's nothing to look at. We may not even make it to Como or King 5. There's nothing to check. Why? Because it's not interesting. So the point there is, let's try to find controversy for the sake of controversy, rather than realizing, as the Rabisa said, we're all created in the image of God. If we're all created in the image of God, and we realize that there's a divine spark in each and every one of us, there has to be something which I know, you know what? This person which drives me crazy, there's still something marvelous about them. I just haven't found it yet. Or I know it, but I don't want to acknowledge it. And try to focus in on that area. David, you asked for solutions? That's a solution. I think Carol has a great solution of getting rid of Facebook. But to me, it's a shame if you still wanted to be on Facebook. Like I wanted to be.
I was just saying a couple of people
Yeah.
that were bullying me. And over time, it kept going on and on and on. And finally, I said enough. And
Yeah, I think sometimes that might be the way. And it
every
could be.
time it went ding, I went, oh, now what? You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Putting
And I
up those
think
boundaries.
it might
That's right.
work. But I think there's a way of trying to see, can I see beyond even those people that the only thing they want to talk about is politics, or the only one thing they want to talk about is the COVID situation. There's still more to talk about. There's still more to find. I think it's trying to find those layers. So some of my beloved members in my congregation, where I feel the conversation isn't going there, I just redirect, try to find another area of topic. And generally, again, because I try to stay neutral publicly on these topics, it allows for more conversation in other areas. And I think that's what we have to do, especially with family members. Because as Ralph mentioned, we've all got a family member who thinks a little funny. And you know what's sad is it's not I've fallen out with an old friend. That is sad. But it's when we say, you know what, I don't talk to my nephew or my niece or a cousin or a sister or a brother. And you ask why. Was there a big fight? And then you tell them, oh, it was over politics. That to me, that's a shame. And like there's reasons that sometimes we fall out. It could be a family bereavement or whatever. But it shouldn't be about politics. It shouldn't be about these types of issues. I think we have to try and see more and deep down realize that our family members, even when we get on each other's nerves, even when we stand on each other's toes, we deeply want to connect. We deeply want to share Shabbat experiences, holiday experiences, birthdays, anniversaries. We want to do that. You know, we want to get together. We want to enjoy it. So my call, my plea is that we try to figure out how to see beyond that red button, that annoying twitch going on here, which I just need to scratch. There's so much more to it. That's enough of me on my soapbox.
And I think, you know, we're talking about modeling it. And I think that that's something else, especially with family members, when you see that, well, somehow we got back to this topic, and you have to model and you know, articulate that I care about you, I care about a relationship, and this topic isn't working. So tell me, did you buy any new shoes? You know, like anything to redirect and to say, like, I care about you, but this hurdle, we're going to walk around.
No-go zone. I like that.
All right, I don't want to empty this conversation because I feel like there's a little bit more that people want to talk about. Does anyone else want to share about this topic? Okay, so this was a question which John submitted to me. He didn't tell me who asked the question, but the question was, is COVID-19 a plague from God? That was the question. Okay? And I said to the Rabisa as we were walking today before it rained. By the way, here's a hot tip for walking in the rain. Don't walk in the rain. Now, the hot tip is check the radar report, not the percentage, but the actual radar. And then find the window for when you can walk. And we found out if you walk today before 10:30, you might get in a walk. So we managed to get in a very short walk today before the rain came and ruined the entire day. But I said to the Rabisa, this is a question I wasn't looking forward to because there's an opportunity for misinterpretation. But I said, I need to answer this question because if I dodge the question, I'm saying there's a problem inherently in it. So therefore, I wanted to address this question. So here it is. And here's how I think is a way to approach it. Everything comes from God. Okay? There's a verse which we say in our morning prayers, which is actually wrong. The blessing says, before we say the Shema every day, blessed are you, Lord our God, who created everything, good, and created everything. But if you actually have a look at the verse, it's God who created good and evil. So everything which we have in this world, whether it's good for us, whether it's bad for us, everything comes from God.
I just want to clarify what you said, because when you said it's wrong, you're just saying that the way it is in prayers is different than in the Torah.
Correct.
Not that the statement itself is inaccurate. I just want to clarify that.
Thank you. What would I do without the Rabisa? The prayer has kind of softened the verse. So instead of saying God created good and evil, it says God created good and everything as a euphemism for the not so good stuff. But this verse, and I think the Rabisa will share a little bit about this as well after me, understanding that everything comes from God does not mean that we have any understanding of why God does something, which means in the moment that I am living right now, in 2021, thank God it's not 2020, I have no understanding whatsoever, not because I'm a mid-level rabbi, but because I don't know. And I don't think any human being knows, and any person who claims to know why God does what he does, it doesn't resonate with me. And I'm going to put that out there. Sometimes I don't share my feelings publicly. I'm publicly stating anyone who knows or claims to know why these things are happening, that it's messianic, that it's a punishment, that it's this, that, or the other, I wholeheartedly, politely say, we do not know. We do not know God's plan. However, we do know that God cares about us, that he loves us, and that everything is eventually for our good. Whether it feels good in the moment or not, in the long-term plan, it's good for us. Meaning, long after COVID is gone, I'm sure, and we already are seeing it, there are things that we are learning as individuals and as a society, and we're going to get things out of it. But as a human being, is any of that worth all the suffering or the loss of life? Absolutely not. So I say, and I want to say it again, yes, everything comes from God, but I have no idea what God's plan is other than the long term, it's good for us all.
Yes, I want to talk about two different things I'm reading and how it relates to what you just explained. One, I am working my way through Nach Yomi, which means that every day you read a little bit more of the prophets. And all through the prophets is like, oh, there's another plague. And the prophets can all explain why this plague is and what the people did to incur it and how it will fix it. Like over and over again, that's the pattern. And that's great. good for the prophets. But we don't have prophets today, and so we don't know the answer. But based on the pattern of prophets, it is pretty clear, you know, plagues happen, they are from God. There is a reason and there is a resolution, and we're in the same place. That's one. Two, Donna comes to book club, though I missed you today, and we're reading a book of why bad things do not happen to good people. Right, and you're all welcome to join. It's on Tuesdays at 11:30. But
not plugging classes.
not plugging it at all. But the premise that we were discussing today is what is pain, and is pain inherently bad, right? And the book explores that in a lot of different ways. But so, is COVID incredibly painful? Yeah, incredibly painful. Is that bad? And to me, it comes back to sort of what you're saying about respect, that if you don't have a conversation with another person, you just sort of live parallel lives, you don't talk, you don't argue, oh yeah, yes, 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 you just move along without connecting in any meaningful way. And that connection often has to come from a place of disagreement and sometimes from pain to get to a place of resolution. And it's the same thing in our relationship with the divine, to be like, wow, this was a really hard experience that I've gone through. This was really painful. This was really hard. And I've come out the other side more developed and closer to God and closer to the people around me. And that's my hope, is that's the consequence of the plague.
Okay, any comments on that one? You can read the chat. There's also chats. I'm not getting, it's hard to read all the chats with everything's going on.
John, we walk on the raindrops. And yes, David, that is everything good and bad comes from God. And because it's from God, that's the question of the book, is do we define it as bad at all, or do we just acknowledge that it's part of a divine gift, even though it's a hard gift? Yes, Ralph.
How do you deal with issues like the death of a child from cancer, the Holocaust?
Right, that's what I was gonna say.
You know, how do you rationalize something like that and say, well, it's all for the best? There are some things that I can't grasp that way.
But only because you're not coming to book club. That's why you can't grasp it.
I should be. You're right.
Yeah, I mean,
I already have
there are unspeakable tragedies, such as the Holocaust, such as when we don't understand why a child suffers, or even, God forbid, passes away, that are beyond our human intellect, which is, it's too hard to explain why is this happening. But the opposite of me saying that because I don't understand it, I want to say that God is not capable. Because either I have to say two things. Either God is not good, or God is not able to control the bad in the world. Neither of those positions resonate with me. And so therefore, I'm left with the only answer possible, which is, I do not understand God's plan. I do not understand why the Holocaust had to happen. I would not say the Holocaust happened so that we have the state of Israel, because that is not enough, even though many rabbis throughout the spectrum talk about that. It's not an answer which resonates with everyone, which is, however bad something can be, if something good comes out of it, then it was worth it. I don't know we can say. So when we have suffering, I often say to people, these are conversations that we're having are good to have a conversation on a wet Tuesday in January. They're not a conversation to be having when you're at a house where someone's just passed away. They're not a conversation to be discussing with a Holocaust survivor. There has to be an understanding of where is that person holding emotionally. And it may be it's too soon, and your job is not to explain or justify, but just to hold their hand and say, I'm sitting with you in pain.
Let me help hold your emotions.
And I just want to give you a hug, and that's all I can do. And generally, that's what I do. When there's a very sad siete or shiva, as we say, I'm with the family. That's all I can do. I don't explain it. I don't try to justify it. I don't say it's God's plan. I just say, I'm here for you. Marco.
It's the difference between sympathy and empathy.
Yeah, absolutely. Carol, you had your hand up? You're muted again. Let me unmute you.
I would say God didn't make the Holocaust happen. People did, right down to the journalists who went reported in the New York Times. You know, it went word of mouth and everything the world knew, but it took forever before we knew and put a stop to it. God didn't do it, and that's how I look at it.
Right, we all have free choice, but again, why did God not intercede? Why did God not change the rules of nature and interact the way that he did in the past, in the time of the Bible? That's a question.
Yeah.
And to say, this is a plan, God sets the rules of nature, we live in them, God is not interacting to change the will of man directly. You're right. Where is humanity is a much stronger question than where was God in the Holocaust.
That's my point, you know, and finally the word of mouth went far enough and wide enough, enough people started voicing an opposition, of course, and did something about it. But it didn't happen soon enough.
But all of these questions and all of these struggles, it needs to help us solidify the power of God, not question and try to undermine him. And I feel like that it becomes, that's, you know, oh, there can't be God. It isn't happening because otherwise we wouldn't have pain and suffering. And I think it's important to always realize that we, as humans, if we try to justify or rationalize it, we are undermining the divine nature of God. Ralph, you had your hand up.
Well, you said earlier that the blessing is incorrect in terms of what the Torah says, which God creates good and God creates the evil. And with that saying to me, I'm sorry, but that God created the Holocaust, that God took a child's life. And anyway.
Yes, and he created COVID. And you can add to that Carol's statement of, you know, well, where is humanity during the Holocaust? You know, we as humans, could we have helped the situation from the beginning? Yes, and that's, you know, up for debating, a debatable point always as to what efforts could have gone to make it less than it is. But the question initially still was, is this from God? And the answer is yes.
And Ralph, if you want to, since we're talking about the book of Shemot this week and the Egyptian exile and being enslaved, and the rationale which the rabbis of the Talmud give for why we were enslaved. Was it part of, it formed who we are, that in our DNA, we would look after the widows, the orphans, the strangers, the slaves, that we would have compassion, that we would be a nation that was not built on power and might, but we were a nation that was built on love the other, love the one who cannot necessarily help you, but love them because they have the divine spirit. But at the same time, I shared this morning on the SBH WhatsApp group, and shame on all of you if you're not on the SBH WhatsApp group, that's another plug. But the SBH WhatsApp group, I shared that there is a reason that not only is it something which forms who the Jews are today, but also perhaps it's a punishment for different things that we did. Perhaps, as I alluded to in my WhatsApp message, it was because the Jews did not stand together, that they gossiped about each other, that they nitpicked and they fought with each other rather than supporting each other. Or perhaps it was just a punishment for them selling their brother into slavery. Or perhaps it was a punishment for Joseph being so successful in Egypt, and the Egyptians got so frustrated with the Jews becoming rich that they rebelled against us, and we were the others, and we were persecuted. But going through all of that, all the rationales of the different rabbis in the Midrashim and the Talmud, etc., we do not understand God's plan. Why couldn't God just have it could have just been Abraham, and we lived in the land of Israel. He came over, and that was it. And they all lived happily ever after. And it wasn't, because God had a plan for us. We, the Jewish people, have a different mission. That part of our physical suffering, and again, it doesn't answer, Ralph, your particular question about the Holocaust or the unique, terrible suffering of a child who passes away, but begadol, in broad strokes, it helps us to understand that through this pain, through this challenge, I grow. I become a better human being. That is my lesson. Now you're saying, well, where do I grow if I'm dead? Where do I grow if this tragedy happens and it's so calamitous that there's nothing I can do about it? You're right. And that's something. But I think that, as I said, we as a society are learning things about ourselves through COVID. And I think that we're going to see that there are going to be long-lasting impacts to COVID way beyond after everyone's been vaccinated and there's herd immunity. When we're back to normal, things are going to be different.
And I think one of the questions in the beginning was kind of like, well, if it's a plague, why? You know, what's God trying to teach us? And we said we can't answer that. And we definitely can't answer that in the collective, like God is trying to teach us this. But I believe that every person has taken this time in their own way to grow themselves and to think about, well, this time of isolation, what can I do differently? How can I come out on the other end a different sort of person? And so in that way, I think the question is for everybody of, well, why am I in this situation? Okay, I can't answer that, but how can I be better from the situation? And I hope everybody is taking some time to reflect on that. And then maybe an answer to what the first question was in the discussion group, maybe we'll come out a more respectful society if people take the time to reflect on themselves.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that we're talking about, one of the questions which was in the chat was, was submitted to us was, does the Rabisa make barekas? Well, that's one thing which you got out of COVID. We learned how to make barekas.
We learned so much on those Zoom cooking classes, right? Esther Lot said at the beginning that, that her husband is Ashkenazic. Well, I'm Ashkenazic. So I didn't know how to make any of this food. I make more Israeli style food. So thanks to these Zoom Sundays, I have definitely, now when you come over I'll feed you.
Barekas.
Biscochos.
Okay, all right. We've been going for about an hour, and sometimes you can have too much of a good thing. Do you want to go for another 10 minutes? Is that okay? Are we pushing it too hard? Another 10? Great. So we're going to give it 10 more minutes. And then I've got some beautiful little girls. Come and say hello.
Hi.
Who is probably almost time for their bed. So we're going to give it 10 more minutes because I told the girls we're going to come in at 8 o'clock to say it's bedtime because they're good ones. So we're going to get 10 more minutes and then we're going to wrap it up. So what's the question you want to take?
Oh, I was telling to brush their teeth. Sorry.
Okay.
You want to open the question log, or does somebody else who's here have a question? I feel like we got sent questions, but with 10 minutes left, maybe somebody who's here right now wants to ask something.
Sure, that works. Feel free to unmute and put your chat and put your conversation in. Yeah. Rhonda? Yeah.
Hi there. My question was, I wanted to know what the Orthodox belief in reincarnation is.
Oh, great. I was going to answer that one. Okay, good. That was the one I was thinking about. So good. So, you want to take that one?
That was asked in book club today too, but I don't know that your answer on that is the same as mine. And my answer—
Can we disagree?
Yes.
Okay, good.
So first of all, one of the core Orthodox, and I think universal, maybe, Jewish belief, but certainly Orthodox, is in that with the coming of the Messiah, that there will be resurrection. So that's not the same as reincarnation, but I just want to put that out there as fact.
Yeah, one of the 13 principles of faith, which Maimonides, the Rambam, put out about 1,000 years ago, that all Jews should believe. One of those is that God will resurrect the dead at the coming of the Messiah. So all those dearly departed relatives, the reason why we bury our loved ones is because when the Messiah comes, their bones will be resurrected and they will come back to life with the coming of Mashiach. That's how we understand reincarnation. Now, beyond that, there is an idea called Gilgul Nefashot, which is that there can be, and this is more of a Hasidic concept and has been the last few hundred years, but maybe even have been a little older than that too, which is that there can be, for one soul, there can be multiple personalities. For example, there is an idea that Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu, is a Gilgul, is a reincarnation of Noah, of Noach, that when Noach was told to build the ark because God was going to bring a flood, what did Noach say? How big, how high? Sure, I'll do it. And it was only after the flood that he realized what was God asking him to do, to fight on behalf of mankind, to decide why they were worthy of being saved, even though they weren't righteous. Moses is a reincarnation. How do we know this? Because God said, I'm going to destroy the Jewish people and I'm going to build a new nation from you after the sin of the golden calf. And Moses says, erase me from your book. I want no part of this. If you're going to destroy the Jewish people, count me out. And the Hasidic rabbis take this phrase, erase me from your book, and they play around with the letters, and it spells Mei Noach, the waters of Noah. And what Moses is saying is, when I was Noah, I made the mistake, and I didn't realize what you were asking me to do. I thought you just wanted me to follow what you told me, and that's not enough. You want me to interact with the world and make it a better world. I thought my place was just to do what I was told. Moshe says, no, I understand now. You want me to fight for the Jewish people. You want me to explain why this stiff-necked, stubborn people who don't really deserve it, do deserve it. And that's what I'm going to do. So that's an idea, it's an old Hasidic idea that we do believe in reincarnation, that we can come back and we can fix what we messed up beforehand.
But it's not a universal idea. It's not all Orthodox Jews.
It's more Kabbalistic. I don't Orthodox, I don't really know.
Well, that was her question,
Yeah.
so I just wanted to frame it. It's not everybody says yes or everyone says no. And when I taught it this morning, that was the example I gave, was
Really?
Moshe and Noah.
Marie and I have been hanging out and we
It's
started
funny.
listening to each other.
But we were in
and
other
giving each
rooms of the
ideas.
house on Zoom.
No worries.
And they said to me, well, Rubisa, do you believe in reincarnation? Like, where do you fall in this camp? And I stated my own very personal opinion, which you may or may not agree with, and I don't know if I've ever shared it, which is that I believe, based on no text, but I believe not necessarily in reincarnation, but I believe in spiritual gifts. So I believe that those who have passed on pass on spiritual gifts. So they don't give their soul into the next person, but there are traits that we get from people, maybe in our family and otherwise, that aren't DNA, but they are spiritual gifts for our soul that we carry.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's even a scientific term for that, which
Really?
is epigenetics, which is we are not just our genotype and our phenotype, but we're able to pass on essences of who we are to the next generation.
Huh.
I'll send you some articles on it.
Thanks, Brad.
Okay, Marco.
Thank you, thank you.
Speaking from my forebears, the Abulafias, who are all Kabbalists, who are all famous Kabbalists,
They
I
were.
know that my neshama, and Johnny Calvos and Mark Gottschalks are all going to be reincarnated as Chinook salmon.
Fish, absolutely.
No doubt about it. We'll be swimming up.
Who's going to be the fisherman, though, Mark? That's what I want to know.
Mark or John's going to be the fisherman, and we'll come up on their hook.
All right, I want to thank everyone for tonight, but I want to go back to the beginning. This was an idea by Rick and John, and I want to thank them for it. They said this is what we want from our synagogue, that it's not just, they like the prayers, but it's not just about prayers. It's about getting together and having these discussions. So we would love to have these discussions. So if you were in touch with Rick or John and you liked what you heard tonight, please reach out to them and let them know, because we'd love to plan to have some more of these. And please God, we can have them every few weeks, every month or so, and we just submit your questions and we can do more of this. So,
And if you didn't like it, you're still welcome back, because we respect you.